Deep Threat Sports Network, welcome back. I'm here with another episode of Foul 'em Hard. Got Garrett with me as usual. Collin here as always. On this episode for you, we have current top 25, notable scores since we last met. We got a new segment that we're going to come at you guys with called For Better or For Worse. We got some conference undefeated talk we're going to get into a little bit, some injury conversation, and our next slate of bangers. I tell you what, man, since life has slowed down for us and we can come here more often, we are really all in on this now. Have a lot more time to discuss the college basketball world. Garrett, I know you've been tuned in. Anything that's caught your eye you just want to talk about real quick before we dive deep into this episode?
I don't even know where to begin. I mean, we are full force into college basketball right now. It's my favorite time of the year. Football's kind of winding down. You really have nothing else going on besides college hoops. So, man, I don't even know where to begin. I think we just get into it and we'll hit everything.
Hey, man, well, let's go. I totally agree with you. This is one of my favorite times of the year in college basketball. I feel like this season, Garrett, has turned it up a notch. I mean, this is some crazy shit we're about to talk about here. But first, real quick, let's go ahead and give you the updated top 25 for the week of January 27th. I will start at 25 and work my way down. This might get a little kind of long-winded here, but there's 25 teams and we got to hit on them. So 25, we have UConn. 24, Vandy. 23, Ole Miss. 22, Texas Tech. 21, Louisville. 20, Mizzou. 19, Memphis. 18, Illinois. 17, Wisconsin. 16, Oregon. 15, hey, man, St. John's. What do you think about that, Garrett? Here they come, baby. 14, Mississippi State. 13, Texas A&M. 12, Kentucky. 11, Kansas. 10, Purdue. 9, Marquette. 8, Tennessee. You kind of see them slipping a little bit here, it seems like recently. 7, Michigan State. What a start for them. 6, Houston coming off a banger. We'll talk about that. 5, our top 5 here. We got 5, Florida. 4, Alabama. 3, Iowa State. 2, Duke. 1, Auburn. Garrett, you like these rankings? Don't like these rankings? How do you feel about them a little bit?
Yeah, I think for the most part they're good. I mean, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, Colin, but of those top 25 teams, do you know how many of those are in the SEC? 10 of
Oh,
them.
it's crazy, man. The SEC is just unfathomable right now.
It's unbelievable. I think you're probably going to see some of these, lesser SEC teams start dropping out. Vandy has obviously picked up a couple huge wins early in the season. I don't expect them to stick around that top 25. I think 1 through 5 is probably pretty accurate. You can make a pretty strong case for Duke being in that top spot, although Auburn is not going to lose that spot unless they, drop a game. And obviously Tennessee at 8 is going to change. They look, just like we always talk about, not very good.
With that, because I know we have a lot to talk about in this episode, but real quick, you bring up Tennessee, and they are a topic of conversation for you and I often, I feel like, because I feel like you and I are some of the only people that, our fans out there probably listen to other shows as well, but I feel like you and I are the only people that really address the conversation that, like, hey, we don't feel like Tennessee is this good. I feel like you and I are definitely the outliers on this conversation, and I'm not steering away from yours and mine opinion at all on that. I'm honestly diving more into that, and you guys will hear kind of why further into this episode, why we're diving more into that. But Garrett, I feel like they are kind of coming down to not crash and burn's way too harsh, but like more of like a reality, like what we really thought was going to take place with them. And obviously, I don't feel like you're surprised either, are you?
No, I mean, not at all. The problem I have with Tennessee, and we kind of touched on this last week. We hit on it a little bit, but man, and we're going to talk about the game against Kentucky a little bit later, but they actually found a way to score the basketball against Kentucky. They scored 73 points. They still couldn't find a way to win. If you're a team that, harps on, we're going to play rock solid defense, and you put up 73, you need to come away with a W.
I couldn't agree more. And what's so funny about that, Garrett, is I took the under on that game because I felt like that was just one of those games. Like Lamont Butler's got out coming into that game. Tennessee is a kind of drag you in the mud basketball team. So I thought maybe they would drag Kentucky way down and really slow them down, missing a key player. Zakai Ziegler, banged up. And if I would have told you, I think last I looked, and I could be wrong on this, he was something like 1 for 10 or 1 for 11 from the 3-point line. If I told you all those things, I feel like the under would have been a lock. But hey, no, the over hit with like 28 seconds left. I was talking to my wife watching the end of that, and I was like, holy shit, I have a chance. They've gone cold. And, obviously reality set in for me as well. But here we're going to turn the page a little bit, and we're going to talk about some notable scores since we last met. This is going to be something that we really dive into every episode now. We kind of have some key segments that we really want to stress coming into this episode and moving forward. So first, I'm going to kind of go over all these games. After we go do about 5 or 6 games at a time, I'm going to kick it to Garrett, kind of let him break down what game stood out to him the most, what one he was most surprised by, or what one was just a fantastic game we want to talk about a little bit more. So first, we're going to dive into Tuesday, January 21st. UCLA defeated number 18 Wisconsin. Arizona State defeated number 23 West Virginia. Ohio State defeated number 11 Purdue. We had a top 25 matchup with number 6 Tennessee defeated Mississippi State, and Texas defeated number 22 Mizzou. Garrett, which one of those games to you was the most notable, stood out the most, really resonated with you the most out of those Tuesday matchups last week?
I think it has to be, I think it's got to be Ohio State getting a big road win in West Lafayette, taking down Purdue. My dad was actually at that game, and I kind of asked him what he saw, what he noticed that maybe we didn't see on TV. And, one of the things that he kind of pointed out, and one thing that I've always noticed with Ohio State basketball teams is they're very, very physical. You hear that term in college basketball used kind of loosely. You can't be physical and foul, but you can be physical on ball, off ball defense. I think the physicality of Ohio State really got to Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer. They did not look like themselves whatsoever. What a big win for Ohio State.
Yeah, man. That win for Ohio State was huge. And I definitely agree that when you kind of look at this, it's like one of those where it's like, wow, I'm actually kind of shocked by that, because I think anytime people hear the name Purdue, they just kind of chalk up a W unless they're playing a top 10, top 15 team because their recent history. And I get it. I mean, until we get to the tournament, right? But I mean, I get it. It's just, I'm surprised. I am surprised you picked that, but I totally understand. I love that pick, and yeah, absolutely. Purdue kind of got slowed down, and when those guards get slowed down for Purdue now with no Zach Edey inside, they really do struggle. So great call, great pick. I love that. Moving on to Wednesday of last week, the 22nd, we had a top 25 matchup. Number 13 Texas A&M defeated Ole Miss. Moving into Thursday, because we only had one standout game on Wednesday. Thursday, the 23rd, we had Maryland defeat Illinois. And Friday, the 24th, we had a top 25 matchup again of number 11 Purdue defeating 21 Michigan. Of those three, Garrett, pick yours.
I really want to talk about how Purdue, with a huge bounce back, just absolutely beat the brakes off of Michigan at home. I'm going to steer away from talking about that just to hit on a different matchup. Maryland absolutely dominated a really, really good Illinois team on the road. I tell you what, this Illinois team, if they get hot from three, and this goes for any team in college basketball, but Illinois kind of takes that to the next level just because of the volume of threes they take. If they get hot, they're very, very difficult to beat. When they go cold, all hell's going to break loose. And you saw that against Maryland. The threes weren't falling. Defensively, they weren't locked in. They gave up 91 points to a Maryland team who offensively really is not that special. They got a couple big men down low that can handle their own. But, man, they really just kind of laid a big egg at home, which you cannot afford to do in the Big Ten.
No, I totally agree with you. And I was messing with my phone here because I was trying to pull up the Maryland score because they're playing right now as we speak against a good Wisconsin team, and it looks like it's 44-43. But, yeah, this Maryland team's kind of impressed me. They've played some decent basketball here down the stretch, I feel like. But also in that game, wasn't a Vicic out that game, I believe, too, for Illinois? I mean, that is a pretty big loss for them. Yeah, man, Maryland can come around and bang with the best of them, I feel like, at times, especially when they're on at night. And to your point, Illinois, man, when they get cold, it's all, like you said, you couldn't say it better, all hell breaks loose for them. So moving on to Saturday, the 25th. A lot of good basketball games this last Saturday, Garrett. Long stretch here, so bear with me, everybody. We had a top 25 matchup of number 1 Auburn defeating number 6 Tennessee. What a back-and-forth basketball game that was. Xavier defeating number 19 UConn. Something that's kind of coming to be a little more similar here, seeing UConn on the losing side of a basketball game. A top 25 matchup of number 7 Houston defeating number 12 Kansas. And Garrett, that was one of the best basketball games I've watched in the regular season, and I can't tell you how long. Unbelievable. Kansas State defeating 23 West Virginia. Minnesota defeating number 15 Oregon. Vandy defeating number 9 Kentucky. Texas defeating Number 13, A&M. A&M blew like a 20-point lead in that basketball game. Really bad showing in the second half for them. Another top 25 matchup of my Missouri Tigers being number 22 ranked, defeating number 16 Ole Miss. Garrett, once again, tell me what stood out to you in that slate of games.
Obviously, the Houston-Kansas game is the one that stands out, but I'm going to go another direction just because we're going to hit on that game in a little more depth later in the show. Obviously, that game stole the headline on Saturday, but one thing that really impressed me, Auburn knocked off Tennessee, and I know the score was not what I expected to be a really close game, 2-point victory, 53-51. Auburn looked really, really, really bad and
I totally agree.
still found a way to pull out a win. If you can win games when you look that bad, it's really, really important. I was really impressed with how they held their composure when things started looking a little rough, and they still found a way to pull it out.
You know what's crazy to me too in that game, Garrett? I was watching with a buddy of ours, mine and yours, Jordan, and we're sitting there watching the game. And Janai Broom, like at some point in time in that game, like he was struggling to really move, especially defensively. He was letting guys get behind him and just wasn't getting there defensively. And the fact that Auburn still legged that out and he legged that out and played such a hard fought game. Fantastic basketball game, and I couldn't agree more with you. I thought Auburn looked awful, honestly, and they found a win. Absolutely crazy that they legged that one out. Turning the page a little bit, still talking about some matchups, but obviously we got to let everybody know, and I'm sure they know this if they're listening to us, that these next two games we're going to talk about was this week, and the new rankings came out. So Monday, January 27th, Arizona defeats number 3, Iowa State. If everybody out there did not see the way that game got forced into overtime by Caleb Love shooting a three-quarter court shot after having an awful night shooting the ball and him making it to force overtime, go watch a video of that because that was pretty impressive stuff. And on Tuesday, the 28th, we had number 12 Kentucky defeating number 8 Tennessee. Garrett, I feel like I know which direction you're going here, but dive on into one real quick.
I have to talk about Arizona's win. It was, unfortunately, I didn't watch it live because I'm pretty sure that shot probably happened around midnight Central Time.
It was late.
It was a 10 o'clock tip, and I didn't make it to the end, but I did wake up and I saw the highlight of it. And, that just kind of, that really hits on the kind of player Caleb Love is. Before that shot, I believe Caleb Love was 1 for 10 from 3.
Bad stuff. It was bad, dude.
He hits the three-quarter shot, sends it to overtime, and just dominated overtime by himself. He essentially won that game in overtime. That is the kind of switch Caleb Love can hit. But he looks so bad for 40 straight minutes of basketball that he almost loses them games. But what a great win for Arizona.
You're so right on everything with that because I feel like everybody looks back at what Caleb Love did. What was that? 3 years ago now, 2 years ago in March Madness with North Carolina, and just put the team on his shoulders. Put one hell of a display of college basketball on, and that was one of those times where you watch him play and you're like, man, this is NBA talent. Well, now we're like 2 or 3 years later, and we're still seeing this guy hang around in college basketball and really just not progress. If anything, almost go the other direction. And you are 100% correct when Caleb Love will either win you a basketball game or lose you a basketball game. If he's on and he plays like he did in overtime, Arizona can honestly truly go in and bang with anybody on any given night of the week. When he's off, they're just an okay team, right? I mean, this is truly going to come down to what Caleb Love can do for this basketball team, and this was incredible what he pulled off there in overtime. If he would have played better, they wouldn't have had to do that. But hey, man, he got it done. Now, going to move on to another new segment we're going to introduce and stay with weekly. Hopefully some weeks it's a little bit shorter than this one because we got quite a few names on this list. But I'm going to kick it over to Garrett here, and he's going to talk about our injury bug segment, talk about some guys that are going to maybe miss some significant time, a little bit of time, some of these key name players that play on these bigger teams that we might see in March. Garrett, why don't you take this away for us?
Yeah, you probably won't see this guy in March just because of how poor Arkansas has been, but Boogie Flane is going to be out for the year with a hand injury. Huge loss for Arkansas. He was the only guy on the team that could really demand the ball and get a bucket when he needed to. Really, really big loss for him. Jeremy Roach for Baylor. is out right now. It's undisclosed. Not sure what's really going on. They need him back immediately. I believe they just took another loss to BYU. They cannot be without Jeremy Roach. DeJuan Harris for Kansas bummed up his ankle. He's questionable. If I'm correct with this, I think he may have played in the game yesterday. You may want to check that, Colin. I didn't watch
Let me
that
pull
game,
that
but I
up real
believe
quick.
he played.
I don't think he did.
So he was still out yesterday.
Yep, he was still out yesterday. He was still
Okay.
out. No minutes in the game yesterday.
Okay, so DeJuan Harris being out's a really, really big deal for Kansas. He's the guy who facilitates everything they do offensively. Lamont Butler for Kentucky. He's undisclosed, have no idea what's going on with him as well. He's questionable for the foreseeable future. They need him back as well. These are all really, really big name guys. Matt Morrell for Ole Miss, also undisclosed. He's questionable for the foreseeable future. And Arthur Kaluma, it's the last one I'm going to touch on. Kansas, undisclosed.
Yeah, Arthur Kaluma being out. Now, if I remember correctly, he was out this last game against Texas A&M for Texas, I believe, right? And for Texas to still go get that dub, that was pretty impressive. Because if I remember correctly, too, I think he's like the second leading scorer for that basketball team right now. So for them to battle back without one of their top two players for Texas, absolutely impressive stuff from them. Not good that he's out. So now, coming out of the injury conversation, this is something that Garrett came up with, and I love this. I think this was such a great idea because when he texted me about this idea for our show, I was like, man, you are 100% correct. We are going to call this segment For Better or For Worse. And Garrett's idea with this segment was when you're sitting back and watching a basketball game, and I'm just going to throw out two teams. I don't even know if they played this season. I'm just going to throw out two teams. We got a UCLA and a Michigan State game on the TV tonight, right? And you're sitting back watching this game. You find yourself asking the question, is this a better win for this team or a worse loss for this team, no matter how this shakes out? And that's kind of how we're going to go through this. So the first game on our list is Houston and Kansas. The Houston-Kansas game ended 92 to 20 or 92 to 86 in double overtime. The game was at Kansas. Houston was the road team notching the dub. And I will kind of take it first on this one. And to be honest with you, Garrett, I feel like this was a worse loss for Kansas than it was a better win for Houston. And kind of the reasons I think that is it was such a loss in like dramatic fashion that Kansas should have won this basketball game twice. They truly did blow this game. If I remember correctly, it was the end of regulation, and I think they were up 6 or 5, and Houston goes and gets a bucket, and then Kansas gets a 5-second on the inbound, and they turn the ball over. Houston scores. We go to overtime. Houston's down like 6 with 12 seconds, 8 seconds left. Hit a three, get a turnover, hit a three. I mean, this was the most unbelievable basketball game I've watched in a long time. And I feel like, Kansas has lost along the way to other top ranked Big 12 teams. Like this was a win I feel like Kansas needed to get under their belt because when they play these top caliber Big 12 teams right now, they're just not proven to really be that dominant basketball team. I mean, we go back and we look, yes, the game was at Missouri, but they lose to Missouri, who Kansas notoriously dominates that rivalry. And I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but it's the facts. And Kansas right now, to me, at times, just doesn't look like they really have all the puzzle pieces, Garrett.
I'm with you. I think it was a really bad loss for Kansas. I'm going to make an argument for that being a better one for Houston, but I do want to I want to hit on Kansas because man, when I watched them, it seems like the last couple times I've watched them, there's and I can't put my finger on what it is. They don't look to be very together as a team, in my
Nope,
opinion.
I agree.
I think Hunter Dickinson is very lazy at times. I think
Yep.
he does if he's not getting the basketball, what's the point of him being out there? He doesn't care if he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And gosh, I feel really bad for DeJuan Harris because he's doing everything he can to get him the ball. But teams are going to deny Hunter Dickinson the ball, and when he doesn't get it, it's almost like he pouts. That's almost what it seems like to me. And man, this Kansas team, this is just not the same team we're used to watching at Kansas. The reason,
I
go ahead, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just gonna say I totally agree with the Hunter Dickinson take. I watched the basketball games from him, and I almost feel like when he's on the court, obviously it doesn't make them worse because he's their leading scorer on the basketball team, but he demands the ball so much that I feel like it takes away from looks they have elsewhere quite a bit, and it forces some turnovers trying to get him the ball. So I'm with you on the Hunter Dickinson take.
I do think, and I'm going to make an argument for Houston and why this was a really important win for this team. And maybe I'm the only one who finds myself kind of thinking this with Houston when I watch them year after year. They're always good. They play very scrappy defense. What do they really ever do tournament wise to have success? That's kind of where I find them as a basketball team. They can win some big games here and there. They're always at the top of the Big 12, but that win pulled them apart from the rest of the Big 12. They now have a comfortable cushion in this conference. Obviously, you got some teams that are trailing them relatively close, but what a huge win for Houston when they were dead to rights, not once, not twice, 3 times, and still found a way to pull out a huge monumental win for them.
Yes, they did, man. And I'm drawing a blank. What's he's a returner, played on a banged up ankle or knee that last game. I'm drawing a blank on the starter. Emmanuel Sharp, right? Or
Maybe.
was it? No, he wasn't. Was he the one banged up coming into the last game? Anyway, he was banged up coming into the game, and you just see these guys just keep grinding it out. And the opposite of what you said about Kansas. This is a team that plays together. This is a team that is not selfish with the rock. This is a team that finds the open guy, and you really saw that for them to battle back into that basketball game. Moving on to the next one. Oh, you have something. You got something?
I was just going to say, if as a basketball team in the Big 12, the game you circle on your schedule every single year is at Kansas. There's
Yes.
not teams that can pull out wins in Lawrence. I mean, I don't know what Bill Self's record is at home off the top of my head. I believe when I went to Lawrence to watch Indiana play a couple years ago, it was in the hundreds, like 100 and something in like 4. Like it's
Oh,
absurd. It's absurd what they do at home. And Houston found a way to pick up a victory there. It's a huge win for them. Huge.
and it was an absolute electric environment, as it always is in this Houston, Kansas. The fans were going ape shit, and rightfully so. I know they lost, but man, they got to witness one of the best college basketball games. I keep saying that, and I mean it, man. It blew me out of my seat. I literally fell out of my seat one time to force double O. It was some of the craziest shit I've ever seen. If you didn't watch it, somebody out there, please go back and watch it. The next thing we're going to talk about, Kentucky 78 at Tennessee 73. Garrett, I'm going to let you take this one first, but for better or worse, was it for Kentucky or Tennessee?
Much better win for Kentucky. And we talk about how bad Tennessee is, and they're not a bad team. We think they're bad because of where they're ranked nationally year after year after year. This was a huge win for Kentucky, in my opinion, because they got, I shouldn't say embarrassed, but they gave up a load of points a week ago. And people were talking about their defense and how they can't stop anyone. And now they're going against the arguably number 1 defense in college basketball. And they proved exactly what I harp in college basketball. Offense wins championships. If you can't score, you can't win. Kentucky flat out beat Tennessee offensively in that game. And man, it was a huge win for them. If you can pick up road wins in any conference, I don't care if it's the SEC, the Big Ten, the Pac-Sun. If you can pick up road wins, it's a huge deal. It's a much better win, in my opinion, for Kentucky.
Absolutely. And Kobe Bryant, 5 for 5 in that game, 3 for 3 from 3 with 18 points. What a basketball game for him to help Kentucky notch that victory. On the flip side of this, to your point, when you can notch these road wins, it's also really bad when you notch these home losses. So I'm going to take that it's a worse loss for Tennessee than it was a better win for Kentucky. And part of that being because Kentucky comes into this game without Lamont Butler, and they come in a man down. Tennessee's at home. Tennessee's lost 3 of their last 4 basketball games. You can kind of tell Rick Barnes, he's not feeling the pressure by any stretch of the imagination, but you can tell there's a little bit more sense of urgency to get this basketball team going. Maybe they're sliding in the wrong direction. And to your point, like you said, we don't think Tennessee's a bad basketball team, but just for the national coverage they get and the high rankings they get, and no matter who they lose to, they don't find themselves slipping down that much. And I also, to this day, still, we talk about this over and over, still don't feel like, Garrett, they have this guy who's going to go get you a bucket. If Chaz Lanier is off, this basketball team's not that good. That's just what it boils down to. Chaz Lanier, to my point, was 3 for 10 from 3, 5 for 14 from the field with 15 points. Not that good of a shooting performance by him. Zakai Ziegler ended up 1 for 11 from 3. Talked about that earlier. Let me ask you a question, Garrett. Am I wrong that I am forgetting, and I know he was hurt last season, but has Zakai Ziegler always shot that many threes even before? Like, What are they divulging into him from the 3-point line so much to be a scorer from that deep? If you're divulging into him to be that guy, I don't feel like your team is that good.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go. The reason they're leaning on Ziegler to score the ball more is because they have no options. If
That's
if
not good.
if Lanier isn't putting the ball in the hoop, where do you go? You have to go to your next option, and that's Ziegler. Last year, when they needed a bucket, just give the ball to Dalton Connect and let him give you as many points as you need. That's why Tennessee was respectable last year. They had a guy who could get a bucket on command. I mean, Dalton Connect was one of the best offensive players I've ever watched in basketball. They don't have a
Yes.
guy this year to do that. So Ziegler's forced to try to carry offensive load that he's not accustomed to doing. He shouldn't take 11 threes.
Well, and I just saw a stat that I hadn't looked at yet. And I knew they shot a lot of threes, but Garrett, Tennessee shot 45 threes in that basketball game. That is not a recipe for success. I don't care. I don't care if Steph Curry's on your basketball team in college. You're shooting 45 threes. We have an issue. Like nothing at that point, nothing else is working. I don't feel like Kentucky is that dominant inside to keep you from trying to drive the paint and go get a bucket. Like Zakai Ziegler is very good at the basketball. Let's work him inside. Find somebody open. Like this is a really bad recipe for success in that basketball game.
And I'm sure that number of threes is probably inflated because they were trailing most of the game because Kentucky got hot offensively, but
Yeah.
you score 40 points in a possession. That is
No.
that is not their game. Chaz Lanier should shoot probably 9 threes a game. That's kind of what he does. Tennessee is not built to shoot 40 threes a game. It just doesn't
Jordan
make sense to me.
Jordan Gainey came off the bench, shot 8 threes. Dubar came off the bench, shot 7 threes. Ziegler shoots 11. Chaz Lanier shoots 10. Milicic shoots 8. I mean, good Lord, man. That is, hey, that's why they're on the losing side of this basketball game. And I do think, obviously, there's not panic because they're still a top 10 ranked basketball team. They still have a really good record. I do think they can still have success down the stretch. But that's why losing 3 of the last 4, they're starting to be a little bit exposed. I mean, do you really just make this team have nights where they can come out and shoot the basket from 3? And if they beat you doing that, and that's how you lose a basketball game, well, hey, you did everything else right. They're going to play some hard defense on you. And Kentucky proved here they went and scored 78 at Tennessee, and Tennessee couldn't battle back all the way to win that basketball game. The next game we're going to talk about, we talked about this a little bit earlier, banger of a basketball game. Iowa State 75 at Arizona 86. I'll take this one first. Garrett will kind of just alternate back and forth here. I think that this was a better win for Arizona. Arizona's trying to make this March push. They've really kind of started clicking here recently, but they needed the real big resume builder. They're kind of on a winning streak. They protected home court. And is this the moment where Caleb Love gets it going? Like I just had that kind of thought in the back of my head. Every time I asked myself that in the last 4 years, I've fallen flat on my face. But like, is this that moment where, okay, I made this damn near full court shot to force my team to overtime at home, got the crowd going, got everybody to believe again, and I go dominate in overtime. Is this where you could see him click? If that's the case, this is a much better win, in my opinion, for Arizona than it was a loss for Iowa State. Feel like Iowa State's a good enough basketball team. Yeah, this sucks. Not one you want to discard the resume with, but I feel like they're a team that has performed week in, week out and can bounce back.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to go on the other side of that. I can't say this was a bad loss for Iowa State. I'd say it's an unfortunate loss. You had the
Yes.
game won. You had the game won in hand, and a guy hits a shot that if he takes it 100 times, he might make it another time, maybe once, maybe twice. I mean, it's once in a season type shot that you see in college basketball. It is a big win for Arizona, and I think the reason that I see it as a bigger win than maybe other people do is Arizona hasn't really looked that impressive to me throughout the course of the season. Their record in the Big Ten or in the Big 12 shows otherwise. I think that maybe put them at 8-1, 9-1.
Yeah. 8-1 in conference play, which is surprising when you look at that, knowing who
It
they
is
are.
it is surprising, and for them to pick up a win, obviously we talked about what Caleb Love did in overtime to kind of carry the load for Arizona, but he was 1 for 10 up to that point from three. The fact they were even in that game is impressive to me. Maybe it's a team we're overlooking, Colin. Maybe this team's better than we think they are, but It's still a good win nonetheless. It's an unfortunate loss for Iowa State. They're a really good basketball team, and Curtis Jones is one of the biggest offensive threats in college basketball.
You want to know why I don't think that we're wrong for kind of overlooking Arizona to this point? As I pulled up some stats here real quick just to make sure I get it right. But Caleb Love is your leading scorer, and when he has nights as bad as he did to start that, not to start the whole entire basketball game, inside the extra 5 minutes, that's not good, man. Because it you got to have somebody else that they can lean on, and I don't feel like they have that. I mean, he's at 15.7 points per game, leading by a little over 4 points per game than the next closest guy on the team. So I don't think we're wrong for our analysis of Arizona this far. I also don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I very well could be wrong. This could be just opinion based, but I also don't feel like the Big 12's really all that dominant right now. Like you kind of see a West Virginia team sprinkle into some rankings a little bit. I'm not real sold on them all the way, especially with the injuries they've had pile up. I saw a Cincinnati team coming into the season that everybody I think thought was going to be better than what they are. My lord, they look like shit at times, like absolute shit at times. In all seriousness, and if anybody out there has rode Baylor harder than me, I want to shake their hand because I just keep hopping back. I don't know. So I feel like they all that strong right now, Garrett. Am I wrong for that?
No, you're not. And I hate to do this, but you did cut out on me a little bit, but I know exactly where you were going with it. So I'm just going to keep
Yeah,
rolling.
absolutely. Yeah,
The,
go
the,
ahead.
the Big 12, although the numbers don't really show it, in the maybe in the national rankings, or if you look at the conference standings, it doesn't look like this is a strong year for the Big 12. But you touched on Baylor. This team nationally, in my opinion, can beat anyone on a neutral floor on any given night. I still believe, even though Kansas hasn't looked great, I think they can beat anyone on any given night. They have the pieces, they have the coach to be able to get wins. These two teams have just slipped down in the standings, and then you obviously have Houston, who is a dominant force. You have Iowa State, who's proven that they are a very good basketball team. They have a road loss to, or maybe it was neutral site loss to Auburn by 2 points. This is a good conference. It's just the teams that we're used to seeing at the top are starting to slip down a little bit. And it's really surprising because both Kansas and Baylor have great rosters. They just can't put things together at this point.
Yeah, and that's what keeps driving me nuts with those two teams. Is I just feel like they should be so dominant, and those are the teams that obviously, especially Kansas being a blue blood. I mean, those two teams get into March and they get the right seed and they get the right matchups. You could find both those teams in the Final Four. I think you and I both. I think I had Baylor and you had Kansas, or maybe I had Kansas and Baylor. Both, however we did our draft. Let's go back and look at the notes, but I know we had Kansas and Baylor between the two of us in the Final Four, and it still would not surprise me if one of those two teams, or both those teams, honestly, find their way. Kind of turning the page here to another for better or worse. We have an SEC matchup of Texas A&M 69 at Texas 70. Garrett, for better or for worse, who do you got here?
I think I have to roll with A&M. And here's the reason why. A&M lost that game 69-70, correct? I just want to make sure I heard that right.
Correct. Yep, correct.
The reason this is a big loss for A&M, Texas, in my opinion, this year, they're down. This is not the Texas basketball teams I'm used to watching. At least in the last handful of years, they were always really guard heavy, really, really talented at the guard position. They don't really have that this year. They lean on Arthur Kaluma to really kind of carry this offense and defense. He's kind of a little bit of a do-it-everything kind of guy. And you went in and you laid an egg. It's a loss you really can't have if you're trying to push up towards that SEC and win this conference.
I just don't understand how they blew a 20-ish point lead. Like,
And that's the big issue I have with it. You can't lose a game when you're in such control for most of it.
I remember it gets cut down to like 14, then 12, and I'm like, okay, any moment A&M's going to pick it back, and they just never did. I mean, so this was a better win for Texas for me. You know, like I just said a second ago, Texas battled back. They got the fans into it, got the crowd believing again. Texas had a big win earlier in the week. They'll talk about it again. They had a big win earlier in that week against Mizzou, kind of coming off some really good wins in that 7-day stretch. And they truly only led this game at the very end of it. And they did it without Kaluma. That's their second leading scorer on this Texas basketball team. So fantastic stuff for them to battle back, not give up. a lot of teams, when you're down at home like that, might just fold. They might just be like, mail it in. It's over. It's a better basketball team than us. We'll try again on Tuesday or Saturday whenever we play next. Mail this shit in, and we'll get on to the next one. But credit to them. Fantastic job. Well coached to come back and win that basketball game. Great game to watch. Another SEC matchup we have here, Ole Miss 75 at Mizzou 83. Garrett, I'm going to let you take this one because I know you probably know which direction I'm going to head with this one. But for better or for worse, who do you got in this one?
I'm going to let you handle the Mizzou talk. I'm going to. I
Okay.
really want to talk about. Colin. I'm one of the biggest Mizzou non-believers in any sport there is.
Rightfully so.
I was going to say for good reason. They always let you down when it's a really big moment. This Mizzou team is different. I told my wife, Sydney, I said, and I told my dad, I said, this Mizzou team is different. They are really, really talented at the guard position. They can shoot with any team in the country. They have enough talent down low that they can hang with any big in the country, in my opinion. I'm going to let you go on with Mizzou because I also think this was a much bigger win for Mizzou.
Yeah, and to your point, real quick before I forget, one of the things that you brought to my attention, talk about the having a bigs that can play with anybody down low. I think they are very talented, especially with a guy like Gray, who is such big bodied and can really play defense against anybody, can go up and get a board. One thing with this Mizzou team, not to really dive all the way into a Mizzou dissect here, but for them to have true success throughout the tournament of March, pending they make it, unless they completely fall flat on their face, I would say it's a safe bet at this point that they're going to be in. They've got to make free throws. You watch a lot of their basketball games, and they'll go on a stretch where they miss 4, 5, 6 free throws in a row. That can't happen. That cannot happen when you get into March. You can skate by a little bit here, which is crazy to say because the SEC is so talented this year. They just made big shots after missing some free throws and battled it out. But in this basketball game, I feel like it was a better win for Mizzou too, because I feel like, almost to your point here, there's a lot of people out there, especially in the national media, that Mizzou still has some serious doubters, some serious critics. I feel like this Mizzou team almost lacks a little bit of true confidence because of all the things they read about them that aren't so good. I mean, you didn't win a conference game last year. You were one of the worst, if not the worst, off the top of my head, basketball seasons Mizzou has ever had. So it's really hard for people to turn the page because we talked about this on our last episode. You see a lot of recency bias. Like, no way in hell, not to circle back to the beginning of our episode, but no way in hell should a UConn basketball team be ranked anymore. This is only because of the name UConn. Mizzou should not only be 5 spots, I'm getting excited, 5 spots better than UConn at this point in the season. Like, Mizzou is a much better team on paper, stacked up resume via resume right now. So they're not 5 spots better. I think this is a big win because it helps their confidence, helps get them going. Ole Miss is a great coach basketball team by Chris Beard. He's had big wins. We talked about Texas earlier. He used to coach at Texas. I mean, he has been in big basketball games, won big moments. And Mizzou coming into this game, coming off a tough Texas loss where they did not shoot the ball well, this got everything going in the right direction for them again. The schedule moving forward is a gauntlet, and that is why when you can get the wins, you got to get the wins, especially at home. That's why I'm all sold that this was a massive win for the Mizzou Tigers this season.
Colin, I do want to say it was a good win at the time. Obviously, because you have Ole Miss ranked at the time. I think Ole Miss, by the end of the season, I really believe they'll be in the bottom half of the SEC, and I don't think that quality of win is going to look as good when you're looking at March resumes on Selection Sunday. It's still a great win. You have to take care of business at home in this league, but I don't think at the end of the season, Ole Miss is going to be on that. It's going to be a quad 1 win, but it's not going to be one of those, wow, what a great home win that was.
Yeah, honestly, I totally agree with you. And I thought about that today a little bit. This doesn't match up, obviously, anywhere near, in my opinion, the Kansas win. And you have that Arkansas win at home where Arkansas is not what anybody thought Arkansas was going to be, really. They're just kind of falling flat on their face. And I'm looking at this Ole Miss, resume here recently with a loss to Mississippi State, a loss to A&M, loss to Mizzou. Now, granted, before that, it did beat Alabama by 10. That is obviously, without a doubt, going to be Ole Miss's best win throughout the rest of the season unless they somehow beat Auburn. That's not going to happen, I don't think. But, I mean, unless things change up and they start to perform on the better side of the spectrum again, yeah, I'm with you, man. Ole Miss is slipping. And I did like to hear what Chris Beard said, though. I mean, even though we think this Ole Miss team's slipping, he came out in his press conference after the game and said, "Hey, man, this Mizzou team is one of the best teams in the country. They can beat anybody on any given night. What a win for them." So, yeah, I also don't think Ole Miss is living up to their own expectations because a couple games before that, you hear Chris Beard talk about how, they had no doubt in their minds they're a Final Four contender or a championship caliber basketball team. So things aren't necessarily going in the right direction for Ole Miss right now. And they have Texas, Auburn, Kentucky their next three games. Good luck.
Win one of those.
Surely win the Texas game at home. Win the Texas game at home. Stop the bleeding on the losing streak. And say a prayer for Auburn and Kentucky that maybe somehow you can win one of those two. All three of those games are at home. That's big. That's real big. All right, Garrett. So that was our new segment for better or for worse. Really enjoyed the hell out of that. I feel like it gives us a chance to dive into some of these bigger basketball games that because there's so many damn games all the time and we try to cover as much as we can't always dive into. And I love that you brought that to my attention because exactly like you said, I always sit on my couch watching these games and I'm like, who was this better or worse for? Love that. So going to talk a little bit about some conference undefeated teams right now. And as it sits, we have Duke, Houston, Michigan State, and Auburn are all the remaining unbeaten teams in conference play. Garrett, which team surprised you the most to be undefeated so far?
Collin, I keep going back and forth. Auburn, it should not surprise me that they're unbeaten, but it does surprise me because they have to play the gauntlet of the SEC. I'm going to stray away from Auburn, and I'm going to go with Michigan State just to defend the Big Ten. This is a team who, at this point in the season, I thought would probably be middle of the road in the Big Ten. They don't shoot the ball particularly well. They don't really have a dominant player who can get a bucket on demand. They have five guys on the floor at all times that can score, but they still don't have that guy who, when you need a bucket, can really get one on
Yeah.
command. And somehow they find themselves unbeaten in the Big Ten, which, in my opinion, is pretty strong this year. It's not as strong as it maybe once was in the past, but this is still a really tough conference to play basketball games in. Maybe some of the tougher road environments in the league, in the nation, and yet they find themselves sitting undefeated at the top. Really surprised and really happy for Tom Izzo. He's one of the more likable coaches in college basketball.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what's funny about everything you said is I could make a case for Houston, Michigan State, and Auburn, all three as well. And my case for Auburn is 100% exactly what you just said. So I'm not going to take them either. I'm surprised that they're undefeated because they're playing the SEC schedule, and the SEC is so damn good this year. I was going to pick Michigan State, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to pick Houston. I don't think there's not a morsel of me that's surprised that Duke's undefeated in conference play right now, especially with how down I think and can factually back up how down the ACC is. So that is to me a no-brainer. I feel like I'd be more alarmed if they had like two losses in the ACC or not than they have none. So I'm going to take Houston. And the sole reason I'm going to take Houston, I think, is because after they had those three early losses in the season, you and I kind of hopped on here, did our first episode. And I'll be honest, man, I said this last episode, I was in full-blown panic mode for Houston, honestly. After that San Diego State loss, I was like, holy shit, man. This team's returning like 4 or 5 starters. There's no way in hell they should be looking this ugly on the court right now. They should really be kicking on all cylinders, and they weren't. And for them to go ahead and turn the page, get it right, come into Big 12 conference play, and just absolutely be humming and have some big wins. I mean, the West Virginia win, I could talk about them earlier, how I think they're slipping, but the West Virginia win was a big win. Kansas win, big win. Beat West Virginia again, big win. You beat a team twice. I'm anxious to see how they go and play Texas Tech. Texas Tech's the team that's coming, and Texas Tech's on the way up. So anxious to see how that game plays out. But yeah, I mean, with the start Houston had, this is surprising for me at this point that they found it and found it so quick and got it right. But I feel like the only real correct answer was Michigan State for everything that you said.
Yeah, and Colin, it's so interesting. We talked about Houston's early season struggles a couple times in this podcast. It's so funny to me. You see this every year with really a handful of teams that struggle in the non-conference. They then hit conference play, and it's almost like a reset to them. It's almost like, okay, a quarter of our season's finished. That was horrible. That was so bad. We get a fresh start. Our conference record is 0-0, and they kick it into gear. And that's, in my opinion, why you see a lot of strange teams win conference tournaments come March. It's a fresh reset for teams who had no shot at winning their conference. They get a full reset and a chance to go to the tournament. And you see teams, like NC State last year, pull out a conference win and find themselves in the dance.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of talked about that last week too. Like you said, we're like they ratcheted it up a little bit, man. It's like, okay, we're gonna grab another gear. We're gonna dig deep into our pockets here, and we're gonna get it going. I mean, this is a last chance opportunity, especially come the conference tournaments, and they ratchet it up and they find a way. NC State, what a great example. I mean, in the run they went on, man, and they proved that when a team plays together and a team gets hot and they get everything flowing, you can go on an unbelievable run and make a lot of shit happen. So, absolutely great take. Next week when we come back, let's see if we still have 4 undefeated conference teams, and I'll be really shocked if we do. Some of these teams have some really good matchups coming up, and to take that away, that leads right into our bangers of the week segment that we're going to close this episode out with, and we have some fantastic basketball games on the horizon. Starting tonight, actually, on January 29th, we have number 4 Bama at number 14 Mississippi State. That game is at 8 p.m., tipping off right now as we speak. Actually, Garrett, real quick, because I made a pick on this game. I think it was Bama +2. What would you have taken here?
I would have taken Mississippi State -2. In fact, I probably would have taken Mississippi State on the money line. Reason being, this Alabama team, to me, they are very capable. And believe me, I'm one of the biggest Alabama supporters. I love this roster. I love the coach. I love the play style. I think that play style, when you see a line like this at -2, why is Mississippi State favored in this game? Makes no sense to me. I fully expect a letdown from Alabama tonight. I could very easily see them shoot in the 20s of 3-point percentage. I think Mississippi State is going to come out and pull out a win at home. It's a really big and important game for Mississippi State to try to find some momentum. Obviously, they're ranked, but this is probably the biggest game they have on their schedule this year. I think they get a home win.
I saw this line, and no bullshit here, Garrett. The first person I thought of was you, because you are very intelligent and all in on like the true detective of like, why is the better team 2-point underdogs right here? I know Mississippi State's at home, but something's fishy about that, so I'm going with it. But I'm going to tell you why I took the opposite. Because Sears getting benched the last basketball game, if he comes out and starts this basketball game, I feel like this is a moment where he's like, I'm going to light the world on fire. I'm going to prove everybody that what just happened to me was bullshit. I wasn't really giving it 150% like I should have, and I'm coming out tonight and I'm making it rain. So, and that is obviously all speculation, but this is why I leaned Alabama on this basketball game, and because we always talk about Nate Oates, he's the man. So that's why I went this direction. Very well could see Mississippi State winning. Home court means everything in college basketball, and the SEC is nuts.
I'll give you an update. It's 8-3 Mississippi State's winning. Time to pick.
Fantastic start for Bama.
I do want to say this isn't on our slate of games. I don't believe. UConn at the moment is getting beat at home by DePaul. This UConn team, I don't even want to start diving into this. Collin, I texted you, I think it was last week when Dan Hurley made his just arrogant comments to the official saying, don't turn your back on me. I'm the best coach in the game. That guy went from hero to zero in 20 games simply because of how he acts on the sidelines. He started losing games and turned into a complete ass.
And not that their roster star-studded, because it's not by no stretch of the imagination, but I almost feel like his arrogance is kind of what's putting them in jeopardy at times. Like, I'm obviously not in that locker room. I'm not a beat writer for UConn, but, dude, it's full-blown panic mode. And if they somehow lose to DePaul at home and we find them in the rankings next week, we're going to have a really serious conversation of maybe just one episode about how UConn's still ranked. So I can't even believe that that's a situation. I can't believe UConn's ever been down for more than 30 seconds in that basketball game. That's horrendous. So before you or I just go off our rocker on that, Texas at number 23, Ole Miss. That game also just tipped off on January 29th tonight as we recorded 8 p.m. I didn't really have any interest in this game. I mean, if you want, we can make picks throughout as we go through these, Garrett, or we can just kind of roll through them. I didn't really have a real lean on this basketball game. Ole Miss slipping Texas big win, kind of a recipe for who knows what.
Yeah, it's a game where Ole Miss has to win this. If they don't, they're in a bit of a downhill slide already. And if they drop another one at home, not a good look. It's got to be Ole Miss.
Yeah, I would be inclined to definitely agree with that. This next game we have your Indiana Hoosiers going in to number 10 Purdue on Friday night at 7 p.m. I know you have something you want to say about this. Go ahead and tell me.
I'm going to try not to lose my ever loving mind. I try my best not to even bring them up in this because I get really animated with this basketball team. They're going to get shelled. They're going to get beat by 30, 35, 40. It could get up to 60. I don't know how bad it's going to get. They're going to get smoked. But here's what I'm going to say. And I love Mike Woodson, the person. I think he's a very likable guy, blah, 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 whatever. He's a horrible basketball coach. Horrendous. I don't know, Colin, if you got to watch their recent loss against Maryland at home. Really upsetting loss. They actually made a great comeback to get this game competitive. They had a 2-point lead with 11 seconds. Any team from 8U to junior high to high school to D3, if you have a foul to give up to, you give the foul with, I don't care how much time is left. At any point that you disrupt the opposing team's set. They didn't do it. Obviously, we saw what happened. Maryland goes, it hits a three. Mike Woodson draws up a Looney Tunes play in the huddle. They get no shot off. The problem with this team, the reason they will get shelled by Purdue, Mike Woodson is adamant, and I don't get it. I was telling my wife, I don't understand why we're so different than all the teams that have success. We're starting two centers who neither one can shoot the ball. Ballo is so dominant that he requires a double team. And I was yelling at the TV, begging for this. When he gets the ball in the low block, you should have four shooters surrounding him. I don't care if they're 30% guys, 40% guys. People who are capable of shooting the three ball. When that double comes, Ballo is capable enough of dishing it out, finding the open shooter. They ran that set for 3 plays in that basketball game. It was 3 straight possessions, and I believe Indiana hit 3 straight threes. They never went back to it. They brought in Malik Renew, our other big, clogs the paint. I don't get it. I truthfully don't understand why we are trying to play basketball in the 40s. Get shooters on the floor, spread the court for you, the most dominant big probably in the Big Ten, and either let him work or shoot the three. I don't get it.
Hey, I couldn't agree with you more. I actually had Indiana +3 in that game because they were the home team, and I liked that they were getting some points. You're to your point. You know Indiana way more than anybody I know by far. From what I see on surface level of watching Indiana basketball games, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. It really does. It's to the point where Woodson has had some success, but yeah, he's spent, man. He's burnt at this point. It's not working, and I don't feel like the players are bought into him all the way anymore. I kind of get that vibe every once in a while, and when they battled back into that basketball game just to lose it, I feel like that's one of those moments where it really was really detrimental to what they were trying to accomplish. And I feel like a lot of the players were kind of just shrugging their shoulders at the end of that and just like, hey, man, F it.
You put forth so much effort, and I credit Indiana at this point. A couple years ago, 3 years ago, even at points last year, if they trail a game by 10 points, we're done. Screw it. Don't even want to try anymore. They fought like hell to get back in that game, and they lost because they have a coach who I don't even know what his purpose is on the sidelines. If you don't understand the simple fundamentals of when to take fouls and how to draw up an inbound play to maybe get a shot off to win, what are you doing with your job? What is your purpose on the sidelines other than just standing there and being a fan?
What makes you not disposable? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
He's making he has cost Indiana, and I mean this seriously, Colin. He has cost Indiana by himself with coaching decisions at least 3 games this year. And it's coaching decisions that I'm pretty sure our Valley Catholic high school basketball coach would not make.
No.
They're so monumentally important mistakes at crucial points in the game that it's almost like he's truthfully just watching the game as a fan.
Hey, I have no pushback on that. There's been multiple games where I've watched, and there's been moments where I totally agree. The rotation doesn't make sense, or the move they make doesn't make sense. Not giving the foul. I mean, to your point, that's basic fundamentals basketball 101 that you coach in high school, and you learn from a very early standpoint that this is what we do. This is just what you do. This is just what you do. And for your sake, I hope Indiana figures it out. I don't see a whole lot of bright spots on their horizon. I hate saying that because I hate telling fans of teams that it doesn't look good, but it just doesn't look good, man. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And
Now I'm just pissed off. Let's go to the next game. They'll lose next.
the next game we're going to talk about is a banger matchup. Number 5 Florida at number 8 Tennessee. These games that all through here that I'm about to talk about are all Saturday, February 1st. This game's at 11 o'clock. And Garrett, I'm going to tell you right now, obviously, we have no idea what spreads are because they don't put basketball lines out that early. I'm taking Florida. I'm confident they probably will be getting a couple points at Tennessee, but I'm taking Florida outright. I don't, and maybe it's just because I'm so against Tennessee at this point and how bad they shoot the ball at times. But Florida, in my opinion, can score with anybody on any night, and I'm all in on this Florida basketball team right now.
Yeah, if Tennessee's favored, I'm going to guess the spread is going to be around 4 or 5, and I think they hold Florida to sub 60 and they win in convincing fashion. They have to. They don't have a choice at this point in the season, and if they don't win this game, Tennessee needs to drop. If they don't drop to at least the 20 spot, and I understand those are two. If they lost to Kentucky and if they lose to Florida, those aren't bad losses. But this team can't keep losing games and stay where they are nationally if they can't figure it out.
Especially the home games, right? We talked about that earlier. So this is a much bigger game for Tennessee. This might be on for better or for worse segment next week. This matchup right here. The next game we'll talk about number 1 Auburn at 23 Ole Miss. This is February 1st as well, again at 1 o'clock. This is a basketball game where I think Ole Miss needs it. They're on life support, but I think Auburn gets it in easy fashion, I think.
I'm right there with you.
Next game then, number 11 Kansas at Baylor, Saturday at 3 o'clock. Another team that is up and down on life support is Baylor. I think both these teams need this game, personally. I don't really know what the spread would be here. I would imagine it's still Kansas favored, even though they're at Baylor, probably 3-4 points, I would guess. Maybe I'm way off on that. And I'm going to find myself taking Baylor because I take Baylor every time they play. So, dumbass me, I'm going to take Baylor again, but I don't think they win this basketball game.
I think you'll be taking Baylor at Baylor will be probably -1, -2 in this game. I think
Really?
I think they'll be the favorite in this game. And I say that based on past experiences with Kansas Baylor games. I think Kansas always struggles at Baylor. I think Baylor will be favored, and I think Baylor is going to get the win.
Man, if Baylor's favorite, it's going to be really hard for me to take them. But hey, I like what you're saying. Talk to me nice. I love Baylor at this point. Number 22, the next game, sorry, number 22, Texas Tech at number 6, Houston at 5 o'clock on Saturday. I see Houston handling business as usual, especially at home. I'm not too sure what to think about this Texas Tech team yet. I know they're kind of on a roll, finding their way into the top 25. I think they may meet their match here with Houston.
This could seriously be like a 48-41 victory. This could be one of the lowest scoring totals of the year. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a really good test for Houston after such an emotional win. We'll see if they can bounce back.
Absolutely. The next game, this is the game of games every year. This is the one that even the casual basketball fan make sure they tune into. North Carolina at number 2 Duke at 5:30 on Saturday. Garrett, I'm just going to put it like this. Does North Carolina have a chance in hell in this basketball game outside of it being a rivalry?
Hell yeah. They're good. And they're not good, but they have 3 guards who I still trust to score the ball when they need to. I think Ian Jackson is one of the best guards in the ACC. He is a walking bucket when he needs one. RJ Davis can get as hot as anyone in the country. And I think the combination of Elliot Cadeau and Seth Trimble are very capable guards. Cooper Flag is going to obviously be a big problem. Who's going to match up with Cooper Flag defensively for Carolina? It's going to have to be Ian Jackson. If he gets in foul trouble, good night. But knowing Duke Carolina games, this will come down to the final 2 minutes, regardless of what the spread is.
Yeah, I find myself agreeing with that. I just keep watching North Carolina basketball games that looks really ugly in spurts, and they're always in some nut cutters. And yeah, John Shire to me is a better coach than Hubert Davis too. I think this for me. I'm just going to lean Duke. I feel like maybe that's a cop out, easy answer, but I'm just going to go Duke here on this one, especially being at home. I know they're right next door to one another. Looking forward to that game though. Everybody looks forward to that game. The next game we're going to talk about, and I hope this is an absolute ass beating for the reason that we've talked about all show. Number 25 UConn at number 9 Marquette at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. Give me Marquette all the way. Give me Marquette by 10 plus. Give me Marquette by 15 plus. Alternate line. I'm all in on pushing the chips against UConn. I'm to the point now where I'm tired of Dan Hurley. I'm tired of the antics. I'm tired of the bullshit, acting like a kid on the sideline. Man, you've won national championships. Act like it, dude. Act like it. And not with arrogance, but act like it.
I will say this. I agree. I hope Marquette runs them out of the building. At this point in time, UConn is still trailing DePaul. If they lose to DePaul, you might see the most motivated UConn team.
Yes.
I think Hurley might make a couple kids quit. He's going to be his practices are going to be brutal leading up to that Marquette game. If they lose to DePaul, watch out for UConn.
Yeah, no, that is the story of college basketball, right? To your point, when the team has a big loss, the next week they come out and they look like world beaters, and that is some shit that to your point, if they somehow, dude, some way lose at home to DePaul, yes, honestly give me UConn. You're right, or UConn quits on them. I mean that goes one or two ways with a really bad loss like that. Hasn't happened yet, but we might talk that game into reality. Go DePaul. Then the last game we're going to talk about for bangers of the week, and really this has potential to not be a banger, right? This is Arkansas at number 12 Kentucky at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. Just a game that maybe can catch your eye, maybe only for the first half. I'm not really sure yet. I feel like Kentucky probably bags them pretty easily, but maybe, just maybe, Arkansas finds something, maybe.
Maybe. I don't want no. No. I mean, I want to say they did, but they just don't look good. And obviously now without Boogie Fland, where do they turn to offensively? John L. Davis, Wagner.
What happened to John L. Davis?
He takes 15 threes a game. It seems like it's all he does. I mean, he's got to get back to being aggressive, driving to the hoop. And Calipari's got to learn how to draw up some plays for these guys. I mean, it's not ISO ball over there. He's got to learn to draw up a set that can get someone an open look other than dribble the clock for 28 seconds and shoot a contested mid-range. It's just the offense for Arkansas is so brutal to watch. I am curious, though, and I want your opinion on this. My wife asked me, she said, do you think Calipari is going to get a warm welcome in Lexington?
I was fixing to go that direction. This is obviously on our list and a big game for one reason, and that's because Cal's back at Kentucky facing the new coach, Mark Pope. Honestly, Garrett, how do you not, right? How do you not? I know it didn't end well, and I know they felt like they came up short a lot of times, and they did. I mean, that is all correct, but how do you not? I mean, you gave your program a lot of entertaining basketball, a lot of very good players that they can look back and talk about for years on end. He had a lot of success when a lot of other programs didn't have the constant success that he had. How do you not?
I know. I want to think that too, but those Kentucky fans are ruthless, man. They're ruthless, and they were so mad at him the last 4 years of early season exits in the tournament. I think you might hear a little bit of mixed. I think you'll hear some booze mixed in there. I really do.
Well, to your point, too, the fans are why he's not there anymore. You know,
Right?
I mean, they ran his ass straight out with a massive buyout. So, yeah, maybe I'll be tuned in just to see that, and then I'm sure the game's over 15 minutes in for sure. But that's a good question. I didn't really think about that aspect of it, but I don't know. And maybe that's the St. Louis fan coming out in me a little bit. You know, I'm with you. I'm a Cardinals fan and just trying to use this as an example. There's old Cardinals guys that come to the plate where I'm like, man, they really sucked ass. But man, look at everybody giving them a standing ovation, right? So I don't know. I feel like they have to, but you're right. There may be that drunk guy like you or me in the stands that's just like, dude, don't even talk about him. We're moving on. So
No, I think you're going to hear it. I think there's going to be some booze mixed in, but he's got to get applauded. He meant way too much to Kentucky basketball to not get applauded.
did too much and put them in a position for success often. Whether he was a good X's and O's coach or not, he brought star-studded rosters of players to that team. I mean, he's got to be one of the coaches with the most like one and done players I can remember. So hopefully so. But Garrett, I don't really have anything else, man. We dissected college basketball in the past 7 days once again, and I love doing this with you. So if you got anything else to add, anything you want us to be on the lookout for, maybe a quick score update for UConn losing to DePaul, go
What
ahead and
I'm
give it
doing,
to me.
there's 12:30 left. UConn still losing. They're down 2, but your Tide have taken the lead on Mississippi State by 2. So there's
Hey,
something
here
to
we
look
go, baby.
forward to.
Hey, I'm looking forward to both those things. UConn losing to DePaul, I'm gonna talk that into reality, and Alabama beat Mississippi State, talk that right into reality here as well.
There you go.
Hey, man, well, this was tons of fun. Everybody out there, this once again was Foul 'em Hard with Deep Threat Sports Network. You will be seeing Garrett and I again next week. We're going to bring a lot of these segments back to you. Had a lot of fun doing these segments. Feel like they're really good topics and really good topics of conversation. And Garrett, you're not going to find a guy that knows more about college basketball than him. I'm just happy to tag along and do this with him. But you can follow us on all our socials at X at DT_sports_, Facebook, Deep Threat Sports Network, Instagram, Deep Threat Sports with a Z, TikTok, Deep Threat Sports Network, YouTube, Deep Threat Sports, and Spotify, Deep Threat Sports. Hey, if there's anybody out there listening too that is really good with socials, we're a bunch of guys. We're a bunch of some dads, some married men that aren't good with socials. If anybody out there wants to tag along with us and push socials for us, you let us know. You reach out to Garrett, myself, or anybody on any of our other shows and let us know. We would love to have you come aboard because we really lack in some departments on some of those things because I feel like our content is honestly as good as you're going to find out there. We're educated, we're factual, and we spit it to you straight, and we dive deep into it here at Deep Threat Sports Network. But once again, that's Garrett. I'm Collin. This is Foul 'em Hard. Hey, Garrett, until next time, brother.
Until
Peace.
next time.